Okay, welcome to our latest interview, video interview on the buyer, and very pleased to be heading off to South Africa and to Creation Wines. And as you can see, the beautiful background there of Creation Wines and the Hamel with Carolyn and JC. Martin, how are you guys? You all right?
Yeah, we surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's tough. We've obviously hearing lots in the UK about the situation in South Africa, and our hearts and the trade, because the trade certainly has got all your support. But perhaps we start there. Really, I mean, how is the situation, and how are you finding things with the lockdown for you?
I think it's been tough because there's been a lot of chopping and changing. You know, we started off when we were in the wine production phase on the 26th of March. We had a Cinderella moment where we weren't sure whether we were going to be able to continue production. And fortunately, that ban was lifted right on the 12th hour. And then we went into a lockdown on exports and on local sales. Then exports were lifted and then reinstated. And afterwards, we opened up for local sales. But in the process, what's happened is, obviously, it created a huge backlog at Cape Town Harbour, which has subsequently been sorted out. So we're very thankful for that. They've opened up 6 new terminals at the harbour so that we can actually get our exports out. And we've lost about 5 billion rand since lockdown in the wine industry, and we're losing about 300 million rand a week on the ban of local wine sales in South Africa at the moment. So the whole industry is struggling. And I think our biggest concern at the moment is jobs, and also obviously what that means in terms of surplus later down the line. So those are the big concerns that we have. We're not too worried about, I think, obviously, small wineries are going to be very concerned about cash flow. That's going to be an issue. And I think that the premium sector will probably get through this, but we are worried about slightly larger producers. So it's a really tough time for everybody. And I think the knock-on effect that it has on jobs and employees is the biggest single concern at the moment.
Yeah, it seems, well, based on the news that we've had here, is whereas I think perhaps in the start of this process that at least there was some negotiation going on, or there was some sort of conversation going on between the industry and the government. It seems as though that's sort of not happening now. It seems as though this is a bit of a fait accompli. You're not going to get much of a relaxation. Is that right?
I think they have started to renegotiate through NEDLAC.
Okay.
So that's the latest thing where policymakers, industry and government have come together to have discussions. And I think there's a lot of discussion going on this week, it seems. Okay. And we're hoping that we find some resolution between risk and being able to sell wine. So it's about balancing risk, I suppose, with the opportunity to look at the economic situation and how we can actually improve that.
Yeah, okay. And from your point of view, in terms of your exports, you mentioned there was some delays in getting the exports moving. I mean, how has that been, and where are you now with your exports?
That's improved considerably. And in fact, I was really pleased that I had a phone call from the Shadow Minister of Transport, David Menier, last night to tell me about what measures they'd implemented. And so I think the backlog that we saw 6 weeks ago or a month ago is slowly easing, and that we are able to now, I wouldn't say we are by any means at a normal in a normal situation, but I think loading is happening much quicker than it was by opening up these 6 terminals.
Okay, and from your exports now, where are your key markets, and have you been able to keep on trading with those countries through this?
There was definitely an impact on some of the markets, and one of the issues is that we're working mainly in the on-trade.
Yeah.
And so obviously we've had to kind of go channel agnostic, and we've had to diversify how we operate in different channels.
Mhm.
People are definitely drinking more premium wines at home and spending more time at home, I think, enjoying fine wines and not perhaps going to restaurants as much as one would like them to. But at the same time, I understand that for some people it's a risk still.
Okay.
And but I think JC's going to tell you a little bit more about the markets and how he sees that.
So we have traditionally our main export markets. It's still remained Europe, and so Europe is reasonable again, opened up to a certain extent at least. So we do have a little bit of exporting volume going.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, each market will completely be separate in the way how they recover. I mean, we have some small export markets like Seychelles or La Réunion, Mauritius, who is still completely dead. I mean, there's no tourist industry. So, and I think it's difficult to foresee in which direction we go. I think that is the uncertainty is most probably the biggest issue right now, because there's not really a formula you can go in business terms to say everything will run in 3 months' time. Let's make a plan how we bridge the next 3 months. We have to take it as it comes along, and you then also mentally become in a kind of a strange stage that when we closed down in April, May, we thought it's disaster because we couldn't sell anything. And then came June and we sold a lot of wine because we compensated a hell of a lot of consumers as a backlog. Then June was very busy. Then as we thought things turns around to be not a complete disaster, then the July ban came mid of this month and put us completely back now in a downspin where we don't know exactly what's coming along. Is that lockdown now into August, September, or is it finished in August? So it's very difficult to manage. First of all, your main overhead, who is the staff, because you don't want to make the adjustment too early to suddenly start to put retrenchments, who is a huge capital loss for your business. So we have to try to hold back our staff, knowing that we gambling slightly that we have a soon opening, but maybe that soon opening doesn't really happen. And what makes me slightly worried in the moment is when obviously we try to assess the situation with all our exporter and across the world. And when you see the feedback overall, it's not that we completely out of the bush yet in terms of, you know, some countries, they open up maybe too early, they're closing down. Then suddenly the restaurant who opens, close the restaurants, or they close the pubs down. So I think this kind of uncertainty makes it very difficult to really plan. And we have to have, I think our policy at the moment is we have to try to get as much flexibility and try different channels. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't work, doesn't matter. We come from another channel and just keep a certain momentum going, that we still be in the face of our consumers, and just hope for the best. You know, I mean, there's no guarantee in the moment that someone has the formula of what will be the best, but I think more you try, better you will have a chance most probably to get to these difficult times.
Yeah, and you're obviously taking steps to sort of take matters in your own hand, aren't you? Because I know that you had started in the UK your own sort of direct to consumer, or you had had a platform in the UK where you could communicate or engage with your customer base here. So I mean, is that something that you're obviously looking to develop now?
Yeah, that's working really well for us, and it's given us the chance to. It actually helps our trade clients as well, because it's a very useful tool to work on promotional ideas. So, for example, JC's doing a tasting with Rosemary Brown, the Master of Wine, and that will be early next week. And then we've sent off, 4 different bottles of wine that she selected, and she's going to be doing an online tasting where her clients meet Jean-Claude, and the chance is that they also have an opportunity to buy further. So that's with about 30 people. So that's kind of a good way to meet 30 people that we wouldn't be able to meet otherwise under the current circumstances, because we can't fly there. And then, of course, we've got our little tasting kits. So we actually also are setting up our tasting kits. And so we're doing a tasting with Bibendum, with our sales team. And it gives us a chance to do a tasting with our sales team for them to have samples of wine there and to go through the tasting as well and introduce them to latest vintages and to have discussions around which clients might like those wines. And then we are also doing educationals as well, and we are doing those little tasting kits direct to consumer as well. So people can buy the tasting experience off the Creation website. And we're just setting up our UK Chardonnay and Pinot Noir tasting kit that we'll be doing verticals on, and that will be live as well in sort of a day's time. And so we can launch new products, new experiences online. So not just sell wine online, but actually create client experiences, because obviously what people really enjoy at Creation in the tasting room normally is tasting our wine, and it kind of creates that aha moment where you really engage with a client and they decide, okay, that's it, I really love this wine, and then they can go and buy the wine. So that's the point behind those tasting kits.
But that's very much the Creation way you've done things, isn't it? At the restaurant there, where you have the tasting flights with different dishes. So it's great that you've been able to find a way to take that online.
Yeah, and we actually, it's amazing.
And keep the Creation sort of like way of doing things, but in a.
I think it's quite innovative. JC did a tasting with 20 people in 7 countries last week, and that was a huge hit, and the feedback was just fantastic. And we're now doing some tastings with Sonoma University, and we are doing that across 2 continents. And so we've also done training with the South African butlers, the international, it's called the South African Butlers Academy, but it's an international butler school, one of the sort of 4 best in the world. It's actually very highly regarded. And so I've done online training about wine and food pairing across 30 countries. And we're doing the 4th installment of that training soon. So that's sort of been on international news as well.
Good. But the tasting kits that you put together, from what I remember, when you were able to be open in South Africa, weren't you doing those in South Africa as well? Did you almost like start them there and then you're now bringing them to your international audience?
Yeah, so we were just actually doing a rehearsal with the client this morning, and we've got a corporate client where we're doing 200 tastings, and we will be doing it with smaller groups, so perhaps 10 to 30 people at a time. And we're doing it across the country, but we can do that as soon as the ban is lifted. So it's given us a chance to work on the technical side of what we're doing and to figure out how to play videos effectively through Zoom, how to create beautiful sound as well. And then everyone is sent these little kits which have a whole, it's called the Alchemy Kit, and we take them through a sort of 6-step experience of wine and food pairing, including the perfume of wine.
Right. Okay. So in a way, you're still able to sort of actually use this time to obviously directly sell in Europe and some of your international markets, but also use this time to actually find out what will work in your own market as well.
Yeah, that's what we've been doing. We really are chasing all avenues, you know. Yeah. I mean, when we started, it was just, a sheep farm in 2002, and we've obviously developed through a lot of innovation, hard work, and a great deal of resilience. We've developed the brand, and we are adapting, and doing the same. We're metamorphosizing and saying, how can we take our product to our customers? How can we taste together apart?
Yeah, and I suppose when I know obviously the situation in South Africa is awful, but because of the work you've done over the last 10 years traveling, and I know you've built up your email database and your own customer database, do you think that's really kind of helping you at least to keep things going, to keep the momentum going through this time?
I think what you most probably will always see in the kind of slightly crisis environments, the person goes normally for the brands he knows. So when you have a certain brand established, there's definitely the benefit you can reach in these situations, because the person maybe takes a bit less kind of an adventurous approach. They really buy brands they know, they feel comfortable with. They maybe met the winemakers and the whole team there, and so I think the whole effort we put it in to having a busy tasting room, as it in the moment looks quite shocking that nobody comes because it's not the right time. Yeah. There was definitely a benefit over the years. We could create a loyal clientele who was pretty much attached to our farm because they were sitting here, had taken the view, had the food and wine pairings. So I still believe it will come back. It is. I still think wine is a product who you want to join together in good company, in good moments, in good environments with good friends. So I don't think the human being will abandon that way. I think that as we in the moment maybe don't foresee anything will happen or it's not close that we're getting through that crisis, I think we still will ending up to having good moments in good restaurants, on good wine estates, celebrating that product. So I think we shouldn't lose that kind of focus also. So it doesn't mean that Croatia never will be again having a nice running tasting room. But as I mentioned before, we don't know if it's 6 months or 2 years. We have to really see how we go to that crisis with if a vaccine is coming or whatsoever maybe triggers that the tourists are back. And it is the environment where we really would like to sell the wine. It is the most rewarding place to sell the wine on our estate, to really showcase to the public what is the real identity of that product, from where it comes. It reflects the terroir at its best when you're most probably tasting it on the estate. But as we go now out, we was quite surprised. You know, I mean, when someone told you 6 months ago or whatever, a year ago, you know what, there will be a moment coming in your life that instead of having 70,000 visitors on a yearly basis, you have 0. I mean, your spontaneous reaction would be, we're closing down. There's no way that we can survive. And somehow we are quite surprised how the person still drink wine. They still like to get to different channels that wine to their doorsteps. So we have to just now, at least as a temporary measure, go that route. And I think in the moment, the big chance you have is there's a lot of good elements coming out of that crisis in a way that you're definitely pushing the direct to customer platforms, who is from a winery estate point of view, a very nice channel to go directly to your end consumer. And I think we want to, even when the tasting room goes back to busy, I think this is an element we want to nurture and carry on, to have a very strong base, to have a platform where when you want the wine, you click somewhere and a day, 2 days later, you will have that product to your doorstep delivered. And I think that's something, it was a wake-up call for us too, because we maybe neglected that element in our business. We were so, in a way, happy how things worked out without going that route. And I think now that is maybe the lesson we take along, to be much more effective and much stronger on that base.
Yeah. So we definitely have used technology we're using technology to improve the experiences that we create, you know, at the moment. And also, obviously, logistics have been a big learning curve. After lockdown, the logistics companies in South Africa didn't know what had hit them, and they kind of all toppled over. So we've also learned from that, because obviously end-to-end logistics are really critical. And I think that the great opportunity is that it does allow us to understand that we can bring a whole lot of people together across the world, like the tasting that we did for one of our clients over for 20 people in 7 countries. That was like his birthday get-together with all of his friends that he couldn't get together with normally. And it's allowed us to also think about how we travel, how we use our time, how we have our meetings. I mean, nobody really knew about Zoom until this happened, and now, you know, we're looking at all sorts of other apps and things that we can use to really improve the quality of the presentations. And I think we're sort of just at the beginning of it, but we're beta testing some other versions, which I think are going to be much more exciting, because you'll really feel like you are very much part of it. You know, you can be doing presentations while you're talking and showing a video that really works and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, you know, as mentioned earlier, you know, I think, you know, obviously you two specifically have been out in the market so much in Europe and Provine and all the various different international fairs. So, I mean, looking forward, do you sort of see, even when things do come back to some sort of normality, being a bit more flexible about how you spend your time and doing a lot more from the farm internationally rather than actually physically traveling the world and spending weeks and weeks on the road.
Yeah, we can do definitely a bit less with airports and train stations and hotels. But that said, you have to build relations ongoing. You cannot just think that you can always then rely on your good connections you built it up maybe 5 years ago, and then you not anymore nurture these good clients. And from time to time, you will have to be, and also we like to go to see these good restaurant chefs, to interact, to get the feel, if something works or maybe something doesn't really work. But I think overall, from my personal view, the biggest lesson, and we knew it is the way to do it, but my biggest lesson, what I learned is you really have to split your risk on a wine estate, that you have not just kind of one market or one segment you want to play. And I think we was fortunate in a way that we had a wide base export markets. We had a strong foot into South Africa. We had a strong tasting room, but we also had a few supermarkets who we still supplied a little bit of products. And suddenly with that huge shift, suddenly these supermarkets became very important because they still could supply in a lockdown, at least overseas. So, and I think it is a lesson also how you sell the wine, that you are maybe in different segments, that you cannot just be maybe in the high price point and not be in a mid segment, because you have to cater for different eventualities who can happen in life. And I think even for us in the beginning, we was quite shocked because we thought we had a very wide spread. And suddenly when that virus came, we started to tick the box and say, are we vulnerable in the tasting room? Yes, the tasting room will be closed. Are we selling a lot on trade? Yes, we do, because we're selling maybe 60% in restaurant business across the world. So suddenly we really had to say, wow, even with our widespread, we started to figure out we have to move on, and we have to try to slightly reposition and rethink how we go to the channels. And fortunately, it seems like for us, it plays out. But when I say for us, it plays out, that is something about what happens now in South Africa. It is not so much, obviously you are very humbled when you see your business goes well, but when you see your industry start to struggle, it is just not a pleasant place. And I mean, we are in a place where most probably there will be some persons have to go out of business because they was unfortunate how they was positioned themselves, or maybe they came too late in that game, or whatever weakness maybe they had, really showcase now to them that maybe there's no future. And for me personally, I think it's terrible to see in the moment what happens on our biggest clients we had was the on-trade. And the on-trade, in South Africa, the on-trade is really on their knees. I mean, the restaurant business, I really would like to be able to give them advice. What should they do? But I have no kind of good advice to them because I don't have a solution. It is just in the moment, not the right time to actually trade in a restaurant business. And we have to see how long it will take, but it will be not resolved in a couple of weeks. It will be unfortunately a slightly longer stretch. We have to go through that.
One of the things that we have that might work in our favor, Richard, is all of our beautiful wide open spaces that we have. And so one of the things that I was discussing with a journalist the other day was we had some restaurants, some protest action from the restaurants, and I think they so should be doing this because no one's been listening to them, and they've been so patient. And these are people in hospitality, so these are not aggressive people. These are people that love other people, that they love entertaining, and they really care about other people. And their protests were so decent. And unfortunately, I think the authorities didn't react appropriately to them. What I do think that is important is that we kind of set up that they have a chance to put their restaurants out onto the pavements as soon as spring arrives and summer arrives, and that they can actually spread themselves out. So even if they have a relatively small restaurant, if they've survived this phase, that they can actually kind of expand their business and make sure that they have the social distancing in place. So we're looking at how do we manage that, how do we make them aware of it, how do we get all the red tape sorted out for the different municipalities so that they can actually have the best chance that they possibly can to survive.
Okay. And South Africa as a country, I mean, we are quite blessed weather-wise. Comes September, October to April, May, we have a very long period where we can cater outside. And I think in a way, in the beginning, we got very frustrated because we saw we will have the peak of the virus most probably in the winter months, and the combination is quite deadly with the normal flu and that virus on top. But that said, now it seems like to us that we will most probably peak over a period in August, early September. And as that peak fortunately might go slightly lower, then we have a chance that we opening into spring, summer, who gives maybe the restaurant a chance to roll it out again at a certain level, who it makes it viable to re-kickstart their businesses.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think, you know, as you say, it's such an uncertain time for everybody. And, you know, even in Europe now, we're going through concerns of a second wave here as well. And, you know, but, you know, I'll just repeat what I said at the beginning, really. I mean, everyone in the UK, and I know across all your key markets have got as much support as we can give you. But perhaps on a more positive note, I mean, you know, what doesn't go away is the quality of your wines and the quality of South Africa's wines. And I think, you know, potentially, you know, perhaps we just concentrate on that a little bit in terms of the fact you have such great wines for us to support and sell. Do you want to, JC, I mean, how was this year's harvest? Do you want to talk us through the 2020 harvest? And
2020 was it was in a way, it was quite a strange year, because we had a really good year, and it nearly went a little bit under because all this kind of virus topic overtaking the whole conversation wherever you went. But what we managed to process in the winery, it is a spectacular vintage, and it is a very rewarding way in the moment how we go forward, because you will see from 17 into 18, 19, now to 20, we have a very good consistency of good quality vintages who definitely will help us over the year to come, what we're now selling into the market. So it was a fair quantity. It's also quite an important element in producing wine, and it was but a very good quality. So that combined gave us a fantastic vintage in 2020, who we will be able to slowly. I mean, we slowly start to bring the first white wines, the unwooded Viognier and the Sauvignon Blanc. They're slowly but surely coming now into the system. Okay. But even the red wines, they have a great complexity. And you know, when you look 20, I think 20 was for the whole South African wine industry in all the regions a good year. That is really rewarding to see, because we had some years we had maybe some drought in the Swartland, and it was quite divided. Some region, they sorted themselves out quite well with the nature on their side, and someone they struggled. But 2020, it was in a way a good recovery in a way for the South African wine industry in terms from a quality and quantity of a crop. And then unfortunately it got a little bit dampened with the virus hanging around as an uncertainty. But yes, I definitely would encourage for the consumers to look into 2020 when they're getting released. There will be definitely a lot of good wines heading from our side into the market.
Yeah, because I mean, you mentioned the drought. Obviously, you've had the previous 3 vintages have had that ongoing knock-on effect of the drought, and then
absolutely
the volume levels and pricing of the grapes.
19 we came slightly out of that problem in that places where there was the heavy drought, and then 20 was again a pretty reasonable year across the board. And the good thing is, even now for 21, we have very good winter rainfall, so our dam level looks really promising. So South Africa will have a good chance to producing a good 21 vintage, who in a way sounds fantastic, but on the other hand already starts to pressurize, as Carolyn mentioned. At one stage then, especially in the kind of lower region, volume, price points, suddenly we will heading for an oversupply. And you see what Europe does. They already distilling alcohol programs with buying wine from the market away, that they're not going into the oversupply. Obviously, that kind of regulation measurements we don't have here in South Africa. So we really have to look of ourselves here. That is not really that the government start to support us. We have to really be coming up with our own solutions, how we manage the stock or the overstock.
Yeah, that is something that they actually are discussing with government at the moment, is how to manage that situation. So
you can try and keep the pricing at a level which...
Yeah, so that's really important, to try and keep the pricing, because we've made so many gains over the last 5 or 6 years, and now we suddenly see that could all be undone, you know, in a matter of months because of what's happened.
Yeah.
So we don't want to. We just want to make sure. I think they want to make sure that they create some stability on that side.
Yeah, because in terms of the wines that you're making, I know that you're obviously at the very kind of premium end, and perhaps JC, in terms of this idea of South Africa becoming identified for particular vintages, you know, which perhaps in the past it hadn't been, you know, actually in the same way, you know, people talk about France or the old world having a specific vintage. I mean, I know you've been at the real forefront of that. I mean, can you perhaps just talk a bit more about how you see that the different vintages developing in South Africa?
It will be definitely be part of it, but I think, as I mentioned before, there will be quite a few places they will be on a reasonable amount of consistency on a high level. That basically means you have nearly every year a decent good year.
Yeah.
And I think the complete failure, or what we mentioned before, yes, the drought maybe really, and not so much on the quality, but on the volumes, really let suffer these places with the heavy drought. But otherwise, we normally getting these grapes ripe. We getting them with not rot, at good sugar levels into the cellar. So biggest threat would be heat waves, and so maybe 2016, a slightly hotter year. But there's also a lot of good producers came out in 16. The guy who picked early enough actually resulted in a good way. You know, Europe. I think Europe also slightly changed. When you look back, when you look in Bordeaux with all the technique the wine estates now start to use, there's not really many years of complete failures. Maybe after 2013, when the weather was really against everything, and then the rot kicked in, and then really they struggled to make decent good wine. But many other years, even in slightly maybe a more tricky year, they're still making a good vintage out of it, because they have a process of selection, who they're ending up in a way that end product looks good. So yes, I you know, obviously you will have a slight difference in vintages, but as I mentioned before, the last 4 years here, 17, 18, 19, and 20 will be consistent, good quality wines coming from our estate. And just to come back about the brand South Africa, how we are received in the moment, I still think for the European and the UK consumers, because you're nearly going out of the UK now, so we have to mention you're not anymore in Europe in a couple of months. So in the UK, we have still a very good price point, I think, against the quality, and that is the very strong hold wherever you trade. I think that still will attract a lot of consumers to your product, and I think that's a good hold we have in South Africa, and that gives us also, in a way, a little bit the peace in mind that we know when we producing good quality, there is a good way that we still can trade. And you know, we always stocked, let's say, for example, from a creation point of view, is when we can build up a little bit of stock on our side, who we over the last year never really could, because it was always rather be slightly short than be in always supply. So when we can build up a little bit of extra, maybe half 6 months stock in the red wine especially, it will be just beneficiary for the end consumer. So it is more kind of how you preserve the cash flow to achieve that kind of stock levels. But as the consumer, you should be becoming beneficiary that you drink the wine when it's really the time to also drink the wine from a quality perspective.
And as a winemaker, I mean, I know, as I say, it's such a hard time from a day-to-day basis, but is it somehow some sort of a release for you, or some level of normality, that you actually can go and still go on these tastings and Zoom and still talk about the quality of your wine and what you actually are there to do? You know, does that somehow give you some level of physical, I don't know, for your own physical self, I suppose?
You know, as a winemaker, I mean, we do like to interact with the audience, and it can be on Zoom or it can be on physical traveling. But traveling takes a hell of a lot of time away from you. And to be honest with you, in a way, I'm quite excited this year, because it was probably the first time I spent 12 months on my estate. And I really have a time to be much more hands-on in the vineyards, in the cellar, to really exactly implement and try to really see where we can still tweak something on the quality side. So there's always also advantages out of certain situations coming along, and we do like to be around here. I mean, I as I say, I do not desperately need airports all the time and hotel beds. I quite like to be hands-on and to experience the farm, the growing process, and to make wine. And the Zoom meeting gives us the freedom, and I think that Zoom way of communication will not disappear because it is very efficient. I mean, we had some Zoom meetings with sommeliers in Holland recently, and we could do in one day 4 or 5 meetings. When I would travel in Holland, it would take me maybe 2 days to go from destination to destination to see these establishments. So I think it has quite a lot of efficiency also, the way in the moment how we interact with the trade. Huh?
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, just being able to talk to so many people in different, places all at once, it's just incredible. I mean, we kind of wouldn't have thought about doing that before as much as we have now. We did a few things like that when we were at 67 Pall Mall, when FaceTime first started, when we kind of did. JC couldn't travel to the UK because he was busy making wine, so I was there doing a presentation to the journalists, and then he could join us, and then we could actually FaceTime that for our clients. So that was quite fun. That was like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And you mentioned, JC, about the idea of like having wines that are suitable for different channels. I mean, and you're very much known as a premium producer, but have you thought about whether you need to be looking at having wines at different price points, or right through make your ladder longer, as it were?
No, we always did a little bit of that. We always had the intention when we catered for the young vineyard blocks. We didn't really want to bring on these young vineyard blocks in our estate range. So we had a Wellpot range, for example, where we catered for this kind of younger blocks. And that said, they can still already produce, especially on the white wines, an incredible good quality at the young stage, like in Sauvignon Blanc and Chardonnay. So there's nothing wrong with that, but it just gave us the freedom to be much more selective when we're heading in our branded creation estate and then up to the reserve range. What we try to do is we never really had a little bit of volume to play around in wine terms. Normally it was pretty much be allocated for our on-trade private clients, and with having slightly more vineyards now in production, now was one of the first years we had a little bit extra stock who we could play around, and obviously we could find in a good way some extra outlets of high-end not really supermarkets but bigger shops, and for them it is quite rewarding to have this kind of quality at reasonable price points for their shelf space where they can sell wine. And for us, it was quite nice in a way to also then showcase these wines to maybe a public who never had any connection to our estate. And then we try over time to aim them into our estate ranges and maybe even up to the reserve ranges. But so we had a little bit of extra possibilities, who we definitely took the chance and tried to make extra trade.
I mean, it's a good opportunity to upsell, to gain entry into the market and then to upsell.
Yeah. And I know you've got this direct-to-consumer platform in the UK. Is that something that you're also looking? Do you also have that in other markets as well, or is that something you're looking to introduce in other countries?
We also do that. It is just about the setup. It is quite slightly complicated. You need banking. So it takes a bit of logistic behind. You need storehouse facilities. Ideally, build it up with not too much overheads, who normally is the critical thing. But to give you also an idea, that UK platform we trading, it took us 2-3 years to get it up and running. I mean, year 1 was not a success story, and then year 2 it started to pick up a little bit. So everything needs a bit of time. We have a similar platform running in Switzerland, who is quite a good market for us, and we're busy now also looking into Germany. It will be just a matter of time that most probably we as an estate will have a platform that most of the private individual, they will be able, of the kind of a platform like this, to buy the wine, and will be able to supply to the end consumer. What
we've done for the moment, Richard, is we do have really great collaboration with some of our agents, and so we've linked obviously clients to our online platform. So if you go onto the Creation shop, you can pretty much link through to most countries.
Okay. And just finally, I mean, I know, JC, you were saying at the beginning there about how it's so uncertain and hard to plan. I mean, but if you can look sort of 12 months down the line, I mean, where do you hope to be, and what kind of steps do you think you need to take to get there?
I mean, when I can wish, where I'd like to be, it's end of the day. Yes, we want to have a tasting room be up and running. I mean, we have a responsibility against our staff. We employ persons, and we want to give them a livelihood and a safe haven to work for us and have an income that they can feed their families through. So, and it is a very fun way to sell the wine. So we really not want to drop that element. I think, and I believe it will come back. It's maybe not 6 months, maybe it's 12 months.
And perhaps it won't be quite as busy. It might be a little less, you know, it might be fewer people kind of having bespoke experiences.
So it will be maybe, it will be definitely, this thing has to be adjusted, whatever the situation needs to be adjusted for. So, but I think the one lesson I think comes out of it, that there is definitely a huge demand for direct business. And I think that has to be elevated to the level that you're becoming a really specialized approach, that you can do it in a very less painful way than previously, that you can access the wine with a few clicks, and we make sure you get that wine to your doorstep in, what, say, 2 days, 3 days. And as you maybe be at your house and say, you know what, I'm running low, I need extra wine, it takes you from the cell phone, you go on and you have that shopping down. And I think that will come. That is definitely something who will not go away. A lot of consumers get used to that kind of easy way to access wine. And that's fantastic. I mean, that shouldn't go away.
It's got to be good, got to be a great end-to-end service. You know, and the thing about that is that one's only as good as the logistics companies that you work with. So that's obviously the tricky part, but those are all the things that we're looking at the moment. I mean, one of the things that we did in lockdown was we set up a quick shop. So one click, you know, yeah.
But before you go, I just wanted to say, you know, really on behalf of, like, obviously I'm talking to you, but you're obviously from all of South Africa, really. But just to say, you know, on the buyer, we're kind of just like literally just raising a glass to friends around the world to say, you know, we're kind of with you, and, you know, we're here to support you. But specifically for yourselves, in terms of the amazing work you've done with all these the virtual tastings. I know you were doing them in South Africa, but when you could have done, and obviously you're now trying to do them in the UK and your other markets. So just to say, in terms of what you're doing, raising, I know, the bar for other producers to perhaps try and do similar things. So just to say thank you, and you know, we wish you all the very best, and thanks for your time today, and hopefully I can come to your winery behind you sometime soon.
We really look forward to that, Richard, and we just want to say thank you for everybody's support. We have had messages from all over the world, and it is really just so heartening sometimes when you just have one of those days where you think, oh, you know, that's a deal I can't do, because, you know, it's just so frustrating. But we're looking forward to the times when we can, and we just want to thank everybody for their support, because export is really where it's at for us at the moment.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks for your time, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks
a lot.
Bye.
Bye.